And this afternoon, we're going to take a look at an issue that we've been covering here for many months, issue of circumcision, and we've been looking at the issue of male circumcision. Today, we'll be taking a look also at female genital mutilation and some of its consequences. Also, looking at questions of pregnancy and breastfeeding and lots of other issues concerning the whole birth process. And my guests this afternoon, I have two guests on the telephone. One is Jody McLaughlin. She is the editor and publisher of The Complete Mother, the magazine of pregnancy, birth, and breastfeeding. And also, we also joined on the line from North Dakota by Dr. Duane Voskuil. He is an adjunct professor at Bismarck State College, a professor of philosophy at that university. And he, along with Jody McLaughlin, have been working on trying to get North Dakota to pass a bill that would pass a bill outlawing genital mutilation of both male and females. And North Dakota was the first state to legislate against genital mutilation. Minnesota passed a FGM law, and New York and Colorado are each working on their own legislation. The bill passed the House and Senate in North Dakota and became law on July 1st, 1995. However, they are working now to get a bill that would cover both male and female genital mutilation. And I have both Jody McLaughlin and Duane Voskuil on the line from North Dakota. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
How are you?
Fine.
All right. Okay, we have a little delay here in our phone. I just want to ask you, first I'm going to start with you, Jody. The Complete Mother is the title of your magazine. And could you just tell the audience a little bit about your magazine? What makes it different from there are many magazines on the newsstand about mothering and childbearing, but what makes your magazine different from the rest?
Well, the difference, what makes our magazine different than many of the other ones is that we tell the truth, all of them. And we have found that the baby actually is the expert on these issues. And if we pay attention to the baby, almost all of the choices we make and the decisions we make will be ones which are correct and ones which serve the needs of the infant. The Complete Mother magazine is an international publication. One of the things we've found is that when babies are born, they have no idea what continent it is. They have no idea what century it is. They don't know what culture it is. Their needs are all basically the same. How those different societies meet those needs, however, are very different. And those are the issues that we bring to our readers through the Complete Mother magazine.
And what issues do you cover in your magazine?
We cover, of course, pregnancy, birth, and breastfeeding, and also those things which make, for example, giving birth easier and safer, such as using gravity. We cover the importance of not being separated from your newborn in order to get off to a good start with breastfeeding. We cover those things which disturb and disrupt the relationship between the mother and the baby and the family, such as routine nursery care in the hospital, circumcision. We talk about alternatives to using formal child care programs, how women are working, and I will tell you that all mothers work. Some of them get paid, some of them, however, do not. It's a very, very creative and enlightened publication, and our writer's guidelines are literary contributions will be accepted if they're gutsy, hysterical, or brilliant. Mm-hmm. So we have always have a great variety of very, very interesting and well-done articles to choose from.
And how long has the magazine been around?
About 11 years now.
And what caused you to start this magazine?
Well, actually, it was started by a woman in Canada, and she had a wonderful birth story that she had written for a magazine that she was working for in Canada, and they didn't want to publish this really incredible story about an easy and safe birth, which incidentally happened to be in water in her home. Mm-hmm. And instead they wanted her to go to Toronto and get close-up pictures of the premature babies with all the tubes running in and out of their bodies, and as graphic photographs as she could of these tortured little beings. And Catherine Young refused to do that. And instead, she used the article that she had written about having an easy and safe birth and used that as the feature article for the first issue of the Complete Mother magazine.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are other publications that look at issues of pregnancy and birth and breastfeeding, but you also cover the issue of circumcision. You've got involved with this issue, you and Dr. Voskuil. Why do you feel this issue is important?
Because it affects the health and well-being of the babies and their families and society as a whole.
How so? Because a lot of people would say, well, this is an issue left for the parents. This is not an important issue. Matter of fact, this is it's beneficial that you have, particularly in male circumcision, that it's beneficial. Why? How come you're taking an anti position on this?
Because 10 out of 10 babies prefer not to be circumcised. And anything else is rhetoric. Babies choose not to have this done. So what we really must be more interested in is finding out why society chooses to impose this on the youngest and most helpless members of their societies. And that's one of the areas that Dr. Voskuil has done a lot of research. I don't need a lot of information. I know it doesn't work for the babies, so I don't need a lot of justification. But there are people out there who have done incredible historical and international research to find out why this persists.
Dr. Voskuil, you were, I should say, an adjunct professor of philosophy at Bismarck State College in Bismarck, North Dakota. Also understand that you were at one point you were chair of the philosophy department at the University of North Dakota.
Right.
Okay. You were let go from your position at Bismarck State because you said in part because of your position on male circumcision.
Partly, yes. It has to do with the fact that my class dealt with a lot of very controversial issues, and it was hard for students to handle. And I think the administration didn't want to deal with quite so much controversy and negative feedback from some of the students.
And what caused you to get involved with this issue?
Well, Jody, I suppose. She sent me the articles of the first international symposium, and it was quite shocking to me. I had never really took it as a radical issue, but it finally occurred to me that this is a human rights issue, and that I, as a philosopher and teacher of ethics and so on, just could not let lie. I had to do something about it.
And now you and Jody have worked together on a bill in North Dakota. It was the first state to legislate against female genital mutilation.
That's right. Dr. Voskuil wrote the bill, the first draft of the bill, and also approved the final version. And what we started out was a bill that protected the genital integrity of minors and non-consenting individuals from surgical alteration or separation. And we were not able to find enough legislative sponsors for this bill to ensure its passage. So we decided that one way to address this issue would be to insert the word female, because we knew that because of Alice Walker's work and Alan Goodman's work and some other writers, that people did know about the horrors of female genital mutilation as it happens in Africa and the Middle East. And so we decided to use that awareness to legislate against these practices in North Dakota.
Now, are there a lot of cases of female genital mutilation in North Dakota?
Not as they are done in Africa and the Middle East, but we have other kinds of genital mutilation that go on in North Dakota and all over the country.
And what is that?
One of them is referred to as separation of adhesions in the very, very young female. And this can be babies as young as 3 months or toddlers or young children. And the doctor observes that the inner labia, which is joined at the base, fused at the base, and releases over a period of time, that the physician observes that perhaps there is a need for this tissue to be open. And it does open during the normal hormonal influences of puberty. but the doctor chooses to open that prematurely, and then he calls that removing adhesions. Now, this is using incorrect terminology because adhesions are scar tissue. This is normal connective tissue, which is called synechia. And we have that happening in North Dakota. We also have women who have had their clitorises removed because their parents have reported observing them masturbating. I don't know of anything that has happened recently on this, but I do know of a woman to whom this was done. And Blue Cross Blue Shield covered female circumcision up until 1957. So this wasn't that long ago.
How old was the woman when she had that procedure done?
She was 3 years old.
3 years old.
Mm-hmm. And the other most common female mutilation in North Dakota and in the rest of the United States is the only surgery for which there is no billing code. This is a ritual surgery which is necessary only in very rare instances, and this surgery is called episiotomy. And almost all women who give birth in the United States today vaginally do have an episiotomy.
And could you explain what that is, please?
The episiotomy is cutting the tissue between the vagina and the thigh, or the vagina and the rectum. It's cutting through muscle and skin layers into the perineum. And this is very, very rarely done in other countries. The United States, with a medical model of maternity care, does this routinely.
And why is this done?
The stated reason is to protect the woman's genital integrity, which I find very interesting because in Africa and the Middle East, when women have their genitals surgically altered, it is stated that this is also done to protect their genital integrity. It's said that this will prevent tears, which is not true. Women can tear 3rd and 4th degrees after having an episiotomy. It's said that episiotomies are easier to repair, which may be true, but they do not heal better. The evidence is that women can have long-term sexual and continence problems subject to their episiotomies.
And they have been a lot of complaints about this?
Just look at your own ads on TV. We have all kinds of incontinence products for women on the market today. One of the reasons some of the experts are saying that this is coming into common use is because so many women's tissues have been damaged in some ways through the use of episiotomy and poor repair.
Has this procedure been done with their consent or without their consent? Or is this done as a matter of rote?
It's usually done as a matter of rote. When I had my episiotomies, nobody asked me if I wanted that. But it's very, very difficult for a woman to give birth safely with her legs in stirrups, on her back with her legs in stirrups. The way the skin tissue has to stretch in order to accommodate that artificial posture makes it very, very difficult to get a baby out. If the woman, however, was in a kneeling position or a squatting position, not only would it make it very difficult to perform an episiotomy, but it would make performing one virtually unnecessary. This is why it's important, if women want to avoid these kinds of things, that they not put themselves in a situation where it would be likely to be done. So I advise women to give birth on their feet, to not be in the bed, to not have their legs up in stirrups, to give birth in a home environment, to give birth at a midwife center or a birthing center, to give birth in water is a really, really good way to protect the perineum.
Now, when you were working on this law against FGM, you knew that this law would be unconstitutional because it does not.
We suspected it would be, yes.
We were hoping it would be.
we told the legislators we thought it might be.
Because why?
Well, because of unequal protection.
Okay, it just applies to.
We're convinced there's no justified reason for excluding males.
It's a sexist law.
Yeah.
Okay.
It protects females only.
Okay. So now you're working to have dual protection.
Well, right now we're in the process of filing a suit against the state claiming that they have an unconstitutional law. And hopefully next time around that they will introduce a bill gender neutral.
Does it look favorable there?
Our attorney believes that we have a very strong case. He said that there is no justifiable reason to protect the genitals of female minors while overlooking the genital integrity of male minors.
And this attorney is also a part of the Minnesota Board of Medical Examiners. He's well informed.
Okay. We will, of course, be following this. It's 2:35 here on WBAI, listener-sponsored community radio in New York. Shelton Walden here. This is Walden's Pond. And my guest this afternoon on the phone from Minot, North Dakota, is Jody McLaughlin. She is the editor and publisher of the Complete Mother magazine, the magazine of pregnancy, birth, and breastfeeding. And Dr. Duane Voskuil. He's an adjunct professor of philosophy, or was former adjunct professor of philosophy at Bismarck State College in Bismarck, North Dakota. Before we go, and we'll be taking some phone calls from my listeners at 212-279-3400. I just wanted to know, Dr. Voskuil, from your students, how did they react to the issues that you were bringing up regarding circumcision?
It was quite varied. Some of them, most of them, when first approached with the subject, thought it was something. First of all, didn't belong in a philosophy class, and secondly, that it was unbelievable that I would be concerned about this. I mean, everybody in their authoritative world and physicians and so on think it's normal, and often their parents. But when they would go back and talk to their parents, they would often find out that their folks, their grandparents, were not circumcised. And when they started asking reasons why people were circumcised and they were not getting good answers, then they came back, many of them came back and said, hey, you're right. But many of them would not and could not, because it's really hard once somebody has been circumcised themselves. It's really hard to admit that you've been violated. And secondly, I have many students, nowadays we have many older than average students, and so I have parents, both male and female, who have circumcised their children. And let me tell you, once that has been done, it is really hard for people to rethink that. And so it's a very emotional issue.
Yeah, it is.
But the philosophical background for this is not just that it's an ethical issue, which it, of course, is, but it also has some very deep philosophical roots in why we see our world as we do. And that is another whole issue which might take us too far.
I just want to know, before we go to the phones, did you read the articles that appeared in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal recently?
Yes, we have.
And what did you think of them?
They were certainly better articles than we have been getting of recent, but there are still some things that I would disagree with or want different emphasis on. I can't quite remember what they are, but I should have those in front of me.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to ask... All right. We're going to go to our phones right now at 212-279-3400. Again, we're talking with Jody McLaughlin and Dr. Duane Voskuil from Minot, North Dakota. We're talking about the law in North Dakota. Actually, North Dakota was the first state to legislate against genital mutilation. They passed a law outlawing female genital mutilation last July 1st. And now they're looking to... make a law that would cover both males and females in that state, and we are taking a look at this issue right here on Walden's Pond this afternoon. If you wish to give us a call right now, it's 212-279-3400, 212-279-3400. Of course, I'm in the studio with Lisa Joy White. Let's go to our first phone call with you and make your comments brief with our guests on the telephone line here. WBAI, you're on the air. Hello?
Let me turn the radio off.
Go right ahead, please.
Sorry, I had to turn off. I had to turn off the
radio.
Radio.
Yes,
Yeah.
Go right ahead, ma'am.
Okay. I may have missed this because I turned in when someone was talking about legislature, but I wonder, when you keep speaking of only one procedure, if the people who the woman and the male who were there were saying thanks to the work of Alice Walker and another person that we now know about female circumcision. And it really distresses me when I hear this reference as though people in Africa didn't know anything about it before, that that you negate the work that has been and is still going on. And I'm concerned also because it denies this procedure being done in Europe. It denies the chastity belt. It denies the universality of this procedure as it relates to women all over the world. And I would like to know how it was eradicated in Europe, because perhaps we could learn some lessons from how it was eradicated in Europe as to how to deal with it where it still occurs. So I guess my question or my point is, one, could you please speak about all forms of female circumcision? Two, could you talk about how it was eradicated in Europe? And could you speak about it with regards to the United States and that it was practiced, primarily as a form of punishment in this country?
Okay.
Okay? Thank you very much. I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you. Go ahead. Hello?
Well, the reason that I mentioned Alice's work and Alan Goodman's work is because unless people are really, really involved in doing this kind of research, they're not going to get information except in passing. So it's some of the more popular authors who are going to impact a little bit of information, at least, into the masses. I'm not really aware of how this ended in Europe. I really believe perhaps it did not. I believe in some ways that it was institutionalized following the burning of the midwives as witches, the midwives and the healers in their communities as witches. The medical community began to develop its own educational systems, and I believe that misogyny, including mutilating of the genitals, became institutionalized in the medical system.
Okay. All right, let's move on here. 212-279-3400. Make your questions brief, please. WBAI, you're on the air. Hello?
Hi.
Yes, go right ahead. You're on the air.
Oh, hello. Now it threw me off. I was thinking about this to say. Oh, yeah, here's what I wanted to say.
Go right ahead.
For years I've been thinking about this. I used to take care of my cousin who had polio, and I was circumcised, and he wasn't. So, since about 8, 9 years old, I'm aware of this. And from what I know, there's 2 levels of the foreskin, and the second layer is equivalent to the clitoris in a woman, from what the information I've gathered.
Okay.
The other thing is, gee, I forgot.
Take your time, relax.
Can't remember this. That'll be sufficient for now. So as I think about this, and you'll be on again
Yes.
with this, and I'll return call with more organized thoughts.
No problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for calling.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm not really sure what parts are analogous to from the female to the male or vice versa, but I do know that this is a highly developed, sensitive, functioning tissue. All the structures are necessary. I don't care for comparing what's done to men to what's done to women as in what is worse. Anytime we cut into the flesh of a non-consenting individual, whether it's an adult or a child, that's inappropriate. And cutting into their sexual tissues is paramount to the worst kind of torture that you can imagine, because it cuts to the very core, not only of their sexuality, but to them as beings who at this point in time are not capable of feeling safe.
Well, Jody, a lot of people would say that this is an important procedure to be done because what it does, it prevents the advent of disease and infection, and it's best done while the child can't remember what happened, as opposed to doing it when the child is older. Well, how do you answer people who say that?
Let me speak to this a little bit.
Sure.
I think there's a certain amount of comparison that needs to be made here between males and females, and one is that the female tissues harbor far more pathogens than male. There's far more places to do so, and there are analogous structures. I mean, the female has a clitoral hood, which has some anatomical similarities to the foreskin, and they get infections at a rate probably 4 times, like urinary tract infections, probably 4 times as often as men or babies. And so any arguments that are given, medical arguments for cleanliness or disease and so on, would apply equally, if not more so, to women. And so those arguments are obviously rationalizations. If you're going to talk about the loss of sensation, one of the reasons I think it's important to talk about comparison here is because most of the people who talk about FGM or female genital mutilation are thinking about the extreme forms of clitoridectomy or infibulation, where you cut off the inner labia and sew them up.
Yes.
However, it is possible simply to remove the clitoral hood of a woman, which would be removing their prepuce. It's possible to to poke the clitoris with needles. I've heard this is another form. There are different kinds of things that can be done, and many of them certainly are physiologically less destructive than removing the male prepuce. So I think that when people say, well, I often get the statement, well, male circumcision isn't anything like female circumcision, meaning by that male circumcision is far more benign. I think that it's important for people to realize that there are many operations which are outlawed and people would be horrified at if it were done to females, which would be less damaging physiologically and far less removal of sensitivity. By removing the prepuce, you're removing estimates range up to half of the nerve endings for sexual sensation. And to go back to the comment made by the man earlier, it's really the glans, penis, that is more analogous to the clitoris than the foreskin itself. But the foreskin does have a great number of nerve endings for sensation.
Elisa Joy White is here.
I have a question for you regarding the issue. Yes, it's not fair or not even an issue to compare pain, men to women or boys to girls. But what about in cases where the gender is in question, in cases as in the hermaphrodite?
I'm really glad that you asked that, because it happened to me recently where I was I was in New York, and one of the women who lived in my building had attended the birth with ambiguous genitalia. Mm-hmm. And so the parents were agonizing, what do we do? And first thing that is done is a chromosome test is done to see if the gender is male or female. And then a decision has to be made, whether or not surgical alteration of the genitals should be done in order to make them appear more female or appear more male. And I would like to suggest that any type of constructive or a destructive surgery be withheld until the individual can make a decision for themselves whether they want their sexual organs enhanced or diminished. As long as the child can void and defecate, the appearance of the genitals is a very personal thing, and perhaps as an adult they would not want, for example, a large clitoris made smaller. Maybe they would be able to live a full, healthy, functioning life with their genitals as they are, even though it might be considered a little unusual. I think that genitals are a personal thing, and if someone wants to have them surgically altered, then they have the right to do that, but you do not have the right, I don't believe, to impose that on someone else, particularly if it's not an issue of health or medical need.
Okay, let's move on to another call here. WBAI, you're on the air. Hello?
Hello, am I on the air?
Yes, you are.
Okay. I wonder how familiar your guests are with the writings of Joseph Lewis.
Okay.
Let me turn off the radio.
Please.
I wonder how familiar your guests are with the writings of Joseph. He's a sociologist.
Okay.
And
I'm not familiar with him at all.
Oh, you may be familiar with Charles Frazier, who wrote the book.
Okay, what's your question?
The point is that he says it has nothing to do with health or lack of sensitivity. He refers to ancient, what he calls blood taboos, because the mother of the child was considered unclean for several days after giving birth. She theoretically was not able to tend to her child, because, especially a male child. So, according to him, the male child had to give up some part of him in order to cleanse his mother. It was a kind of exchange of tissue kind of thing. and that since there is no other justification for it, there's no health justification, there's no sensation justification. It had to do with only these sort of basic superstitions that a mother was unclean, and the child had to make this kind of exchange. Are you familiar with that kind of sociological history?
There's a lot of theories and that's one of them.
You're familiar
that
with it?
particular one you're referring to had to have developed in a period in history in which we were talking of patriarchal involvement structures, because earlier forms, which were more oriented towards goddess religion and matrifocal traditions, probably would not have thought in those terms. But yes, I think that you're quite correct when you say that the origin of this ritual has nothing to do with medical procedures. I think that is very important. And I think that even Jews today will say that this is not a medical issue. This is a religious issue, cultural issue of some kind.
Okay, you're fading out a little bit on us, but let's move on to another call here. 212-279-3400. WBAI, you're on the air.
Hello, Sheldon. This is Olive.
Oh, hi, Olive. How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
All right. Long time no hear.
Yeah. The brilliance of your guest is really good that they're conferring and doing research on these things. However, I'm sort of concerned about poor people in the future, since hospitals are being closed down, schools, and other kinds of facilities. I don't know, I just have this, vision of people not knowing how to clean themselves, how to take care of themselves.
Yeah, could you speak up a little bit, Laura?
Yes.
Okay.
Having births just anywhere. I mean, is there any education, after learning all of this mutilation and all, is there any education on health and hygiene?
That's a good question.
I mean, are they going to have something like that in the future or now so that we could carry it on? Because if there is going to be an inequality of health care, we need to start thinking about that now. Thank you, and I'll listen.
All right, thanks for calling.
That was a very interesting collection of ideas and issues she brought together. As far as poor people and hygiene, if one of the basic needs that people have is a need to protect their bodily integrity, and maintaining cleanliness is something that is done whether or not it's the Inuit in Alaska or people in the tropics. We find ways to keep ourselves clean. As far as the hospital issue, hospitals have never been shown to be the safest place to give birth. Birth is a normal physiological event, and hospitals have bacteria and pathogens that you won't find anywhere else in the city. And as far as the safety issue, countries where most of the births happen in a home or a birth center have much lower infant mortality rates than the United States does. So if we start looking at what I call an outcome-based program of care, what are the outcomes that we wish to have, then it would behoove us to look at those countries who have achieved those outcomes and incorporate those principles which will work for us in order to help us in the United States have as good outcomes as they do in some of the other countries in Europe and other parts of the world.
But I think what she's referring to is the fact that the United States does not have any sort of system of national health insurance like you have in a lot of other countries where, you say in England or other places where health care is equalized.
That's because in the United States, health care is not a right, it's a business. And nothing is going to change, and Hillary Clinton can attest to that unless everything stays the same. This is something that cannot be influenced from the outside, and my friends who are in the medical community tell me it's something that cannot be changed from the inside.
All right, let's see if we can get a couple more calls here before we part company. WBAI, you're on the air. Hello?
Oh, I'm so glad you got to me. I really am impressed with your speakers because not only are they talking, I mean, I work inside of a hospital, and one of the things is that I have seen many babies circumcised, sometimes without really explaining to the mother the problems and the consequences of that. And everybody tells them is to avoid infection. When I meet the mothers, I said, do you know how many millions of men are never circumcised? And what is this word infection? And I was listening to Olive. What is this business with food and uncleanliness? I will tell you that humanity has lived for millions of years without hospitals, and I guarantee you that they have better clean systems than anything that goes inside of the hospitals. The problem, and I heard about what she said about the separation of the baby, what we have is created an artificial, horrendous, criminal world that we take today as natural and good, when on the contrary, that's what it gives us, the violence, the hatred, all these things. I mean, how you take a puppy away from a dog, you return it to that dog, it will reject it. And yet we do this to human beings over and over, and then we tell them that they must go through all these terrible behaviors in order to give birth. These children are, mothers say, oh my God, the pain that I had to go, I can't walk, all these stitches, all these things. Like this was the normal process. So birthing has become something that women feared. Because, you know, when you give birth in a maternity center, none of these things are there. The support, the scare, and the lady said it. Once they killed the witches were really the women, wise women of ancient times. All they did was enter this evil system. And until people don't realize that we are being conned, and I mean from the day that we're born until the day we die, we are not going to survive this. And people are complaining about the system that we have. Somehow we have to group together and kind of educate people, not about the hygiene, but about what goes on in hospitals.
Okay, I appreciate your call so much. Unfortunately, the clock in here.
Bye-bye.
But I thank you for your call. All right. Jody McLaughlin and Duane Voskuil, you have a final word here before we leave. We have about 30 seconds.
I'd like to say ditto to what that woman just said. Just very, very well said.
Okay, and Jody McLaughlin.
I just want to remind young families out there, if they're interested in having ongoing information which will support the choices that they make for the health and well-being of their children, I'd invite them to subscribe to the Complete Mother magazine.
Yes, please. And what's your address?
The address is Post Office Box 209, Minot, that's M-I-N-O-T, North Dakota, ND 58702. And a subscription is $12 for 1 year, or you can get 2 years for $20.
Okay, that's the Complete Mother. And it's in Box 209, Minot, North Dakota 58702. Jody McLaughlin, the editor and publisher of The Complete Mother, and Dr. Duane Voskuil, I want to thank you very much for being my guest here on Walden's Pond today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will do this again real soon too. And good luck with your fight against the laws up there.
Well, it's filing tomorrow, so we'll let you know what happens.
Okay, thank you. All right, Shelton Walden here with Walden's Pond.